Welcome to our channel. Enjoy the video.
November 29, 1970. In the mountains outside Bergen, Norway, two hikers entered a remote valley known as Isdalen. It was cold. The landscape was almost completely silent. Then they noticed something strange. A body. A woman was lying among the rocks, badly burned. At first, investigators had almost nothing to identify her. No passport. No wallet. No identification papers. No obvious explanation for why she was there. But the scene itself was disturbing. Nearby, police found several objects belonging to the woman. There were bottles, clothing, and other personal items, but many of the labels had been removed. It was as if someone had deliberately erased the evidence of who she was. The woman appeared to have traveled extensively. But without an identity, even determining where she had come from became a challenge. Investigators began examining every detail of the scene. And then came one of the strangest discoveries. The woman had been surrounded by objects that seemed almost deliberately arranged. Some items appeared burned. Others were damaged. And crucially, there was no simple explanation for how she had ended up alone in this isolated valley. Police initially considered the possibility of suicide. But questions immediately began to emerge. Why had the labels been removed from her clothing? Why was she carrying so little that could identify her? And most importantly, who was this woman? Investigators launched an effort to reconstruct her final days. They searched hotels. They questioned witnesses. They examined her belongings. And slowly, they discovered something even more unsettling. This woman had not simply appeared in Norway. She had been moving through Europe under different names. Multiple identities. Multiple hotel rooms. Multiple versions of herself. And somehow, she had managed to leave almost no trace of the person she really was. The investigation had just begun. But the deeper police looked, the less the woman seemed like an ordinary traveler. Because someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure she could never be identified. The investigators now had a body. But they still didn't have a name. So they began with the woman's last known movements. They searched hotels across Norway. And eventually, they found something remarkable. The woman had checked into several hotels using different names. Different identities. Different details. But the descriptions of the woman matched. She spoke several languages. She appeared educated. And she seemed comfortable moving from one country to another. To investigators, this was no longer looking like the life of an ordinary tourist. Then came another discovery. Two suitcases connected to the woman were found at a railway station in Bergen. Inside were clothes, shoes, cosmetics, wigs, and more disturbing clues. The labels had been removed from many of the clothes. Even some of the personal belongings had been altered or stripped of identifying information. It was almost as though someone had carefully prepared her possessions so that nobody could trace them back to her. But the strangest evidence was hidden among the belongings. Investigators found a series of handwritten notes. At first, they appeared meaningless. There were letters and numbers arranged in strange combinations. But when investigators began comparing the notes with her hotel stays, a pattern started to emerge. The codes appeared to correspond with places she had visited. Her movements across Europe were beginning to form a map. And the picture was unsettling. She had traveled through several European countries. She changed hotels frequently. She used aliases. And she seemed determined to keep her real identity hidden. Then investigators spoke with hotel employees. Some remembered her. One witness described her as reserved. Another recalled that she seemed nervous. And there were reports that she had met men during her travels. But who were they? Business associates? Friends? Or something more secretive? Every answer seemed to create another question. The woman had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide her identity. But why? Was she running away from someone? Was she involved in something dangerous? Or had she been living under a false identity for an entirely different reason? Then investigators discovered something that changed the direction of the case. Her coded notes weren't simply random scribbles. They appeared to contain information about her movements. And suddenly, the possibility emerged that the mysterious woman had been living a carefully planned double life. A life built around secrecy. A life where names could be changed. Clothes could be discarded. And identities could disappear. But if she really was hiding something, there was one question investigators couldn't escape. Who was she hiding from? And more importantly, who was she meeting? The more investigators reconstructed the Isdal woman's movements, the stranger her story became. She had used several aliases. She had traveled across Europe. And she had left behind coded information that appeared to record her movements. But investigators still didn't know what those codes meant. Then they began comparing the numbers with the woman's hotel stays. A pattern emerged. The notes appeared to contain abbreviations connected to places she had visited. It was almost like a private travel log. But why would someone need to record ordinary hotel stays in code? There was another detail that made the case even more suspicious. The woman seemed unusually careful about her identity. She changed names. She removed labels from clothing. And she carried different belongings that made it difficult to determine where she had actually come from. Investigators also learned that she spoke several languages. To some, that suggested an educated international traveler. But during the Cold War, investigators couldn't ignore another possibility: espionage. Norway was a strategically important country. It was a member of NATO. And Europe was filled with intelligence operations. Could the mysterious woman have been involved in espionage? It was only a theory. There was no definitive evidence proving that she was a spy. But the circumstances were enough to make investigators wonder. Then came reports of men she had met during her travels. Some witnesses remembered her in conversation with unfamiliar men. Others noticed that she seemed secretive about her movements. But nobody could establish who these men were. And that uncertainty became one of the most frustrating aspects of the investigation. Because if those men knew her real identity, they might have known what she was doing in Norway. And perhaps even what happened to her. Investigators continued searching for a connection. They examined her luggage, her clothing, her hotel records, her coded notes. Everything seemed to point toward a woman who had deliberately constructed a secret identity. But there was a problem. There was no clear motive. No confirmed employer. No proven connection to any intelligence agency. And no person who could definitively say, "I know who she was." Then investigators turned their attention back to her final days. The woman had been seen in Bergen. She had checked into a hotel. She had moved through the city. And then, somehow, she ended up in the isolated Isdalen Valley. Dead. Her identity erased. Her past obscured. And her final movements filled with unanswered questions. The investigation had started as an unidentified death. Now it was beginning to resemble something far more complicated. A mystery involving aliases, coded records, unexplained meetings, and a woman who seemed determined to remain invisible. But there was still one possibility investigators could not dismiss. What if the secret life wasn't meant to protect her? What if someone else had a reason to make sure she disappeared? The investigation had reached a dead end. Police knew how the woman had lived her final days. They knew the hotels she had visited. They had her suitcases, her clothing, her coded notes. But they still didn't know the most important thing: her name. Investigators searched for missing person reports across Europe. They compared descriptions. They questioned witnesses. They circulated photographs. But nobody came forward to identify her. Eventually, the mysterious woman was buried in Bergen. Without a confirmed identity. Without a family standing beside her grave. And without an explanation for how she had died. But the case didn't disappear. Decades later, researchers became fascinated by the mystery. They returned to the original evidence and began asking questions that investigators in 1970 couldn't easily answer. Modern forensic techniques offered new possibilities. The woman's belongings were examined again. Researchers revisited the strange coded notes. They studied her movements. They investigated the different identities she had used. And slowly, new theories emerged. Some believe she may have been connected to intelligence operations during the Cold War. Others argued that the evidence wasn't strong enough to prove she was a spy. Another possibility was that she had deliberately created false identities for personal reasons. And then there was the question of her death. Was it suicide? Was it an accident? Or was someone responsible? The circumstances surrounding her final moments remained deeply uncertain. Even after decades of investigation, there was no definitive answer. But perhaps the most haunting part of the case was not the mystery surrounding her death. It was the mystery surrounding her life. Somewhere, she had been born. Someone had known her. Someone had heard her real name. Someone may have remembered her face. Yet when she died, almost every trace of that identity was gone. In 2016, investigators even used modern DNA technology in an attempt to learn more about her ancestry. The results offered clues about her possible background. But they still didn't provide the one thing investigators had been searching for since 1970. Her identity. More than 5 decades after her body was discovered, the Isdal Woman remains unidentified. Her case has survived because every answer seems to lead to another question. Why did she use so many names? Why were the labels removed from her clothes? Who were the people she met? Why did she travel so secretly? And most importantly, who was the woman behind all those identities? Maybe she was a spy. Maybe she was simply a woman desperate to disappear. Or maybe the truth lies somewhere between those possibilities. But one thing is certain. The woman who entered the Isdal Valley in 1970 left behind a mystery that has outlived everyone who first investigated it. And even today, the woman known as the Isdal Woman still has no name.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you in the next one.